they charged the cannons head-on. This first wave was butchered by the artillery, their bodies filling the ditch.
Dude. Italian Wars. Haven't forgotten. Tomorrow is going to be Caesar and the Roman Civil War. Continue all the series that I am extremely behind on, guys. Told you. I haven't forgotten it, alright?
The War of the League of Cambrai saw alliances crumble and old enemies become friends, and this would continue in the second half of the conflict. After the survival of Venice was challenged, the Maritime Republic had regained its forces and pushed back. On the other hand, the French king Louis XII, after the victory at Agnadello and the Pyrrhic one at Ravenna, was surprisingly on the losing side, having been pushed out of the peninsula by the forces of the Holy League, organized by Pope Julius II. Welcome to the 4th episode in our series on the Italian Wars, featuring the battles of Novara and Marignano. And if, like Louis XII, you want to see what Italy has to
No, I don't use NordVPN. I low-key might use NordVPN, I can't even lie, but not right now. I ain't in the position for that right now. I don't have a reason for NordVPN.
Massimiliano was put on the throne by the Swiss in exchange for money and territory. Afterwards, the Spanish army under Cardona and the papal force of Cardinal de' Medici entered Tuscany to overturn Piero Soderini's pro-French government in Florence, also guilty of sending men to help France and hosting the Council of Pisa. The Spanish infantry assaulted Prato and brutally sacked the city, leaving 5,000 dead. Terrified of suffering the same fate, Florence surrendered to Cardona, who gave it to Giuliano de' Medici, reinstating the Medici family in the city. Alliances shifted once again in autumn. In the summer, a conference in Mantua had been called to draw the new borders in Italy, but the many
bro, every time I hear that word Mantua, I think of Napoleon, Italy now. Oh man.
Interests stalled talks. Julius wanted to retain his acquisition in Emilia and take Ferrara. The Venetians and Imperials argued about lands in Veneto, and Spain hoped to keep a balance in the peninsula. In November 1512, the Papal State allied with Maximilian Habsburg, alienating the Venetians. Already bitter that Brescia had been surrendered to the Spanish and not to them, this alliance drove the Venetians back to the French, with whom they stipulated an alliance in March 1513 after 5 years of hostilities. Northern Italy would be split between the two, and Del Viano returned to Venice after having been captive in France. In February 1513, Pope Julius passed away, and Cardinal de' Medici was elected as Leo X. Younger and less belligerent than his predecessor, it became soon apparent that his objective was to secure his family's position in central Italy. With a new...
Bro, oh my God. I just realized the background music that was playing in the background.
Pope less keen on defending the re-established Sforza government, both France and Venice advanced against the Duchy of Milan in May 1513, with great success. The Spanish army held an ambiguous position. Having signed a truce on the Pyrenees front, they were not keen to engage. France occupied the western part of Lombardy, while Venice took Cremona and Brescia, and other areas rebelled against Sforza. As the Spanish contingent retreated south, Massimiliano Sforza fled to Novara with 4,000 Swiss mercenaries. The army under La Tremoille besieged
the city. At this point, I'm kind of just waiting for them to like switch sides again.
But on the night of the 5th of June, a contingent of another 7,000 Swiss mercenaries entered Novara, so the French commanders ordered a retreat in the morning. Before the dawn of the following day, the Swiss infantry went out of Novara's gate in 3 columns and headed a few kilometers east of Novara, where the French had encamped dispersedly, the bulk of the army being at Cascina Ariotta. The French army hastily drew up to the battle, confused and surprised by the night attack. The main column of 7,000 men advanced against the French right flank, where an equally sized contingent of Landsknecht with cannons was positioned. Under heavy artillery fire, the Swiss pike formations advanced stoically, taking many casualties and engaged the German mercenaries. Meanwhile, the remaining Swiss
bro. I can only imagine that. Freaking just watching them just marching and marching, just taking that head on. What the heck, man? Freaking badass. I can't even lie.
Short work of the Italian and French infantry and repelled the French light cavalry. The heavy French men-at-arms were unable to set up for battle because of the muddy and rough terrain. The struggle between the Germans and the Swiss, who were locked in a bloody fray, was won by the latter.
I was gonna say, aren't Swiss Germans too? But then I realized that there's also Italian and French Swiss nationality, so okay. Never mind.
Turned the French cannons against their owners and routed the enemy. As the infantry fled, many were cut down. The baggage train and cannons were captured, but the French cavalry escaped mostly unscathed. The Swiss, who had lost around 1,500 men, obtained a stunning victory against a numerically superior enemy after days of marching, their fame reaching its zenith.
I want to see more of the Swiss in action.
Following the defeat at Novara,
definitely.
The French escaped back to France once again.
As usual.
They were pursued out of Piedmont by...
I mean, France is always running back to France. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but like, low-key, it's true.
By the Swiss and the Spanish. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Venetian army retreated from Brescia and attempted to storm Verona. As the garrison repelled the attack and the French had left Italy, the Venetians were again forced to adopt the same defensive strategy centered around Padua and Treviso. The combined Spanish and Imperial army attempted to dislodge Delviano from Padua and sacked Mestre, from where a few artillery shots were fired towards Venice to taunt them. Positioned between the enemy capital and their army, in October, the Allied army withdrew. Delviano was provoked to follow and attacked to block them, but he was soundly defeated near Vicenza by the disciplined Spanish and German infantry, which cut through the Venetian militia. Following this, the League took Vicenza, ending that year's campaign in Italy.
I'm getting back.
You know, again, another stalemate, of course. I'm just waiting to see for them to switch sides again, literally. I'm literally just waiting for that.
In August of that year, the Swiss Confederacy and Imperial forces invaded Burgundy and laid siege to Dijon, capitalizing on the momentum obtained from the victory at Novara. Worried that he would lose part of the French heartland, Louis entered peace talks with the Swiss, giving up his claims in Lombardy for the security of his eastern borders. By 1514, Louis was desperate to break his diplomatic isolation, which saw all his neighbors hostile towards him. A first crack in the system of alliances came in the summer of that year, where he concluded an alliance with King Henry of England and married his sister Mary following the death of his first wife, Queen Anne. Another ruler with whom he attempted to reconcile was Pope Leo X. The first step he took was to repudiate the Council of Pisa in 1513, but the Pope still held an ambiguous policy towards the French. At the same time, Florence had historically a number of economic interests in France, and the Medicis were ambitious, considering Ferrara, Urbino and Naples as possible thrones for the Pope's brother Giuliano and nephew Lorenzo. These political considerations would lead to the arranged marriage of Giuliano de' Medici and Filiberta of Savoy, who was a relative of the French heir. The war did not stop in Veneto. The campaign of the year 1514 started with yet another imperial invasion of Friuli, but Delviano counterattacked in March and pushed them out. He was then given permission by the Venetian Senate to leave his base in Padua and attacked Spanish contingents to his south in small skirmishes, where the besieged detachment at Crema took over Bergamo after defeating a Milanese army. As the Milanese and Spanish retook Bergamo, The Venetians retreated to Padua, keeping the stalemate of the previous years. On the 1st of January 1515, King Louis died and was succeeded by his cousin Francis. The new Valois monarch was young, strong, brave, and charismatic.
Francis! Isn't this a guy who also had a reputation of being like super handsome or something like that? I know that there's the other French king I talked about before, known as Louis the Handsome or something like that. Or what's his name? Louis? I don't know. But the other guy who had a reputation of being handsome. This guy, I'm pretty sure this guy had like a somewhat of a reputation of being handsome too. Yeah.
And he had also been educated in the arts of commanding an army and ruling a kingdom. He wasted no time in preparing to enforce the French ambitions in Italy. He confirmed the alliances with England and Venice and concluded a truce with the ruler of the Low Countries, Charles Habsburg. He also expected the neutrality of the Pope, following the political marriage arranged the previous year. Francis hired an impressive army of 23,000 landsknechts, 11,000 horsemen, and 60 artillery pieces.
That drip though.
The Swiss in Milan, aware of the concentration of soldiers in Lyon, decided to anticipate the French king by sending soldiers to block the most important passes in the Alps. But Francis played them by entering Italy through steep valleys further south after Trivulzio had scouted the area. The army arrived after a monumental effort to Saluzzo, where La Police, with a contingent of men-at-arms, rode to Villafranca, managing to surprise and destroy the Milanese cavalry commanded by Prospero Colonna. The Swiss, now without the support of the Milanese horsemen, backtracked and concentrated around Milan. The Pope, seeing which way the wind was blowing, dispatched his army to secure Parma and Piacenza, but only sent a token cavalry unit to the Swiss. Francis continued.
Wow, bro. Oh my goodness, so dirty of the Pope. Also, speaking of the Pope, right? It's insane to me how, one, the Pope isn't even necessary anymore. I mean, after Jesus came, there was no need for a high priest. I actually chat with my brother about this, actually, and he explained it to me much better. Same brother that I talk about here, he said that basically before Jesus came, there was the high priest of the church, and that would what the hell did he tell me? Frick, I'm trying to remember. Basically, like, basically do the same thing that the Pope is doing today, basically. And since Jesus came, sacrificed himself, he got resurrected. Yeah, there was no need for that anymore, right? Like, that whole point of the Pope, like, representing God, like, there's no point of that anymore because Jesus already came. Like, why do you still need that? Everybody already saw Jesus. They know what Jesus came. They know why he came. It's like, you don't need that anymore. Like, you have the Spirit. Like, it's up, like, it's freaking. I gotta have him explain that much better than I can because he was the one who explained it to me. But it really does make sense though. It's like, I mean, Jesus is literally the Son of God, and it's like, why the hell do you need somebody who's like the holiest person on earth or like representing God or whatever the heck? It's like, you don't need that. Jesus already came, showed everybody like what you gotta do, and left, bro. So not only is the Pope unnecessary, but we have the Pope here freaking leading armies and whatnot. Last time I checked, I never seen anywhere in the Bible talking about the Pope needs to lead armies, bro.
Reaching the outskirts of Milan and taking Novara and Pavia. The Swiss and Massimiliano at this point were ready to negotiate.
Gosh, they're just gonna lose these cities over and over and over.
To give up the duchy for a large fee to the Swiss and a noble title for the Duke.
That's literally all I've been seeing. Is like, oh my goodness, they took this city, and then it's like, who cares, dude? They're gonna lose it anyway.
An agreement was reached in the Treaty of Gallarate, though not accepted unanimously by all Swiss cantons, which made the majority of the soldiers of the cantons of Bern, Fribourg, and Solothurn return home. Both Cardona and Delviano had moved closer to the confronting armies by then. Francis positioned himself at the town of Melignano, then called Marignano, to cut the Swiss off from the League's army encamped near Piacenza, and to get closer to his Venetian allies, now stationed at Lodi, at 1 day of marching from his position. The Confederate leaders in Milan were divided on whether or not to attack the French. During the night, between the 12th and 13th of September, a skirmish broke out near Porta Romana between Papal and French cavalry, during which some Swiss were killed. The bells rang, and on the following day, the Swiss gathered at the castle of Milan, where Cardinal Scina, with a fiery speech, convinced the majority of commanders to face the French army, and filled the soldiers with courage.
Bro, what did he say? What did he say? Come on, kings and generals. How do you not know what he said? Oh, that would have been so freaking lit to listen to.
Confidence that they would win.
Hey, bro, but you got all that stats and charisma.
Most people have...
The Swiss army was composed of around 25,000 to 30,000 infantry and around 10 cannons. They were joined by 200 light horses from the Papal State and Spain, and an unknown number of Sforza loyalists and Milanese rabble. Confronting them were 3,000 cavalrymen, 26,000 Landsknechts, of which 6,000 were the elite Black Band Company, the best German mercenaries of the time, 9,500 French and Gascon infantry under Pedro Navarro, and 60 cannons of various calibers. The Venetians stationed at Lodi had 900 heavy cavalry, 1,400 light cavalry, and 9,000 infantrymen. The Swiss divided themselves up into 3 battalions once they were out of the city, with a strategy developed on the few pieces of information they had on the enemy positions. The French were quartered north of Marignano in 3 distinct encampments in a line along the main road. While marching, the Swiss roared their cannons to instill courage in the troops, giving confirmation to the French that they were arriving, as their spies had reported. When they reached the outskirts of San Giuliano, the Swiss leaders met to reformulate a plan, as the previous intelligence they gathered was incorrect. They decided to attack even though it was late afternoon, and they were mostly concerned about locating the position of the French artillery, which they considered the only real weapon the French had. A task made difficult by the smoke and dust caused by the enemy army forming up. So the Swiss fired their cannons, and when the French responded, the Swiss knew that they were on a rampart behind a deep ditch. Some soldiers from the cantons that signed the treaty, called the Freiknechte, stayed with the army, and they charged the cannons head-on. This first wave was butchered by the artillery, their bodies filling the ditch.
Dude. Oh, that's gross. I can't even lie. That's actually gross. Bro, I'm like thinking of all those like gore videos that I watched in the past. Oh my gosh. Yo. Oh my gosh, dude. Frick. I want to get that image out of my head. I didn't want to talk about what the heck I'm thinking. I mean, you think about it. It's gonna be it's so awful. Freaking heads just dripping blood and all. Oh my gosh, dude. You know something? I don't even know if I should bring this up, but I'm gonna bring it up anyways. It's like, dude, you know when those cannons are like blowing people apart, quite literally blowing people apart, man, and they hit them in their gut, dude. You know they're like oh my gosh, dude, they're freaking stool, bro. Like, because the human body always has like stool in it, right? Like it's kind of funny thinking about that, actually, how people are you finding stool to be like disgusting and so dirty and whatnot, but literally everybody has stool inside of them. Even when you go and use the bathroom, right? Like, and you empty yourself, obviously, like, you still have stool inside of you. You can't really avoid that. Like, that's the issue why colon cancer can eventually happen, or like intestines cancer or something like that. But think about a cannon just blowing off, and you're like in nearby and it like splats on you. Ugh, absolutely nasty, man.
But when a greater bulk
Oh
of the Swiss
God.
attacked, they overcame the defenses and clashed with the German and Gascon defenders.
Oh, that's
The
impressive.
Swiss found success, resisting the enemy's counterattack in their tight formations and capturing 7 artillery pieces, sending the vanguard scrambling back, as did the Milanese accompanying the Swiss. Francis, seeing parts of his vanguard faltering, assembled 1,000 heavy cavalry and charged the Swiss pikemen
the
that were
French.
chasing a band of lanzknechts,
Oh wait, no.
rallying them.
These are pike. Ooh, yeah. They're not gonna get crushed easily unless they get
to
flanked.
continue fighting. The Constable Bourbon, who commanded the right, also managed to regain control of some of his men, and with a battery set up on a second line, he pushed back another battalion of Swiss. The fighting continued even after it got dark, and the French records complain that their soldiers could not distinguish between friend and foe. The fighting ended only at 11 in the evening, but it would not be a calm night. The Swiss rested under the stars at San Giuliano and Zivido, very close to their adversaries. The French attempted to dislodge them, but some of them got lost and encamped behind enemy lines and were short on supplies. Trivulzio, with some engineers, destroyed the embankment of a nearby canal, filling their defensive ditch, and the water spilled over to some of the Swiss positions, destroying most of their gunpowder. The French king, who spent all the night with his buttock on the saddle, lance in hand and helmet on the head, sent a messenger to Lodi, calling for Delviano to move with his army.
Oh, he's cooking. He's not
At
even.
dawn, Francis positioned his army in 3 units, with himself in the center, with the cannons in front, and 2 wings commanded by Bourbon and the Duke of Alençon. The 3 Swiss arrays moved against their counterparts, with the biggest of them towards the king's position. They were mauled by a hail of crossbow bolts, arquebus shots, and cannon fire, forcing some of them to retreat. But some of the Swiss pikemen traversed the flooded ditch, took the artillery, and fought against the center. On the French right,
yet
pikes
again.
did not engage for either lack of courage or desertion, so
What?
Bourbon charged into the flank of the Swiss Central Battalion. On the left, the Swiss battalion had more success, routing the cavalry under Alençon.
I cannot tell who's
Some of
winning
them
this
attacked
battle
the
right
flank
now.
of the King's central group,
Oh.
while others chased the fleeing soldiers.
Wait.
The cavalry of the left flank was soon reorganized, and then came the Venetian vanguard with Delviano's horsemen. The reformed French cavalry and Delviano charged the Swiss left flank, but failed to do much damage and were
Why in the world would they? What? You have this side right here where my cursor is at. I thought they were going to flank them on the right side. Why are they going for the left? What? I feel like I am
Pulsed.
missing. What?
However, the Swiss saw the approaching Venetian army and lost heart. Their right
Yeah.
and left battalions started to flee. The central formation, having lost all hope, tried to retreat in good order under the fire of the enemy infantry. Most escaped on the main road, flanked by the waterways. 6,000 concentrated in a forest, where they resisted until the cannons dislodged them, while others who sought rescue in some nearby buildings were burnt alive or massacred by the locals.
Bro, oh my gosh, bro. Imagine. Oh, dude, brutal, bro. That's one of my worst fears. Burning alive. Oh my gosh, just thinking about that is just so freaking. Oh, I would not wish that upon my worst enemy. And there's a lot of things that I would wish upon my worst enemy, but freaking burning alive, oh no.
Trivulzio would call the fight a battle of giants. Francis was knighted after the battle by the famous French knight Bayard, giving him the aura of chivalrous king. Although the Swiss showed their prowess, the battle ended with more than 10,000 of them dead and thousands wounded or captured, while the French lost around 5,000.
This Wednesday.
The rest of the Swiss went back to Milan, and from there to Switzerland. Francis had ordered not to pursue them, hoping to not drive an indefinite wedge between him and the Confederacy. All of Lombardy was reoccupied. Milan soon capitulated, and Massimiliano Sforza, treated cordially as he was just considered a Swiss puppet, was sent to Paris, where he could live the rest of his life comfortably. The king entered Milan on the 11th of October as a victor, the city paying a fine for its insubordination.
Yet again, let's see.
The Swiss sent envoys to make peace, and an agreement was reached, similar to the Treaty of Gallarate, though it was not accepted by all the cantons, as they wanted to hold on to their conquests in Lombardy. Cardona returned to Naples in the eventuality of an attack there, while Pope Leo opened up for negotiations. The agreement reached was that Francis would take the Medici family, Florence and the Papal State under his protection. Giuliano would be made Duke of Nemours, while the Pope would protect the Milanese state and hand Parma and Piacenza back. In December 1515, at Bologna, another meeting was held where the matter of the autonomy of the French Church was resolved in favor of the Pope, giving ample privilege.
Bologna, isn't that Boulogne? Isn't that the same city that Napoleon? I thought it was called Boulogne. I guess it's translation.
There,
I'm
while
guessing
the
it's
integrity
translation.
of the
Yeah.
Duchy of Ferrara was confirmed. Meanwhile, the war was in its final stages. The French sent their army to uphold their part of the deal with Venice, besieging Brescia in October. However, the siege dragged out, as a few weeks after the Battle of Marignano, Del Viano died of his wounds. Sorties disrupted the siege effort, and a German relief force arrived in December. In February 1516, a new threat was looming over the French.
Oh boy!
English King Henry VIII, who had a personal rivalry with Francis, was worried about his success, so he financed a Swiss invasion composed of soldiers from the cantons that did not sign the treaty, and Maximilian joined with his own troops. They entered Italy from Trentino, and after unsuccessfully besieging Assola, pressed on to Milan. The French Venetian army did not want to engage them, predicting correctly that the invasion force would soon run out of funds, and 8,000 Swiss from the other cantons came to Milan. As the capital of Lombardy did not revolt, Maximilian, now old and tired, announced he did not have the funds to continue the operation and turned back, while the Swiss only left one.
So, bro basically said, I'm broke. But it's crazy to me though how these armies and people literally would get up and think, I'm gonna go and stab that stranger over there for some money. It like seriously, like most people just sit down, accept it, and think, okay, well, yeah, you know, that's what happened. But no, that's kind of weird. Like I always thought that was like weird as hell, because it's like, one, you are physically like stabbing a person, right? Like you're gonna hear them be in pain, groan, watch them bleed. It's not like when you go and take a gun, you shoot somebody. No, when you take a gun, shoot somebody, they just fall on the ground. That's not. I mean, even then, that's still like. That's, you know, that like, how could that not make you feel a certain type of way? Like, bro, that person was literally just alive like 5 seconds ago, and now he's just freaking gone. I don't know, man, but it's just weird to me how like people just were so okay with like just getting up, grabbing a sword, and just slicing and dicing. Like, what? And they never like felt any type of way. Like, all for money too. You know what the Bible says? Money is the root of all evil. But freaking hell, dude, that is just so bizarre to me. Like,
once they had been repaid,
risking their lives,
Francis
too.
would make peace with the Swiss Confederacy in November with the Treaty of Fribourg, freeing Milan from Swiss interference and establishing Swiss neutrality towards France. Meanwhile, Pope Leo was working towards creating a Medician power base in central Italy. After giving the government of Florence to Giuliano de' Medici, he had ambitions to set up his nephew, Lorenzo, in Naples too, but the King of France would not give up his claim to the kingdom. When Giuliano died, Lorenzo took over Florence and tried to annex the cities of Lucca and Siena, but failed. So in the summer of 1516, he decided instead to attack Urbino, even though its Duke Francesco Maria della Rovere had given refuge to the Medici after being exiled from Florence. Della Rovere fled from his duchy, which was quickly overwhelmed. However, the following year he returned with an army composed of soldiers stationed at Verona, and in February he started a costly war that ended in September with a compromise that allowed Della Rovere to retire in Mantua with his army. In 1519, Lorenzo died, and with only a female newborn, Caterina de' Medici, as heir, the papacy took direct control of the duchy.
Well,
back in the Po Valley, following a few more skirmishes, Brescia finally surrendered to the Venetian Republic in May 1516. The Venetian and French armies then went to Verona, but the Imperial and Spanish defenders held out for the rest of the year until negotiations between the Habsburgs and Francis gave the city to the Venetians in January 1517.
bro, freaking today's New Year's, 7 week ago was Christmas. It's also kind of like insane to me how people just sat there and sit under siege for like years, dude. Like imagine like you're under siege, right? And every single day you're living a life under siege. Like you wake up and you're like,
let's go check and see what's going on in the siege right now. I wonder if the enemy is doing something today.
you know, you see the enemy hasn't done nothing. You're like, freaking, you know,
Why I am going to work.
yo, bloody hell, man. No, you do that all year. Like, oh my gosh.
After 8 years, the war in Veneto had ended. The many armies which had traversed and fought there had devastated the territory. The city of Vicenza had changed hands 36 times between the Battle of Agnadello and 1517, causing much suffering. Despite the fact that the Venetians were still the strongest Italian state, the Republic was in a dire economic situation. Meanwhile, two great European powers were building up forces to take full control of the peninsula. In the next episode in this series, we will talk about the War of 1521 to 1526 and the famous Battle of Pavia, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible.
Freaking hell, man. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, go check out my other reactions on this series. Definitely. If you have any suggestions, go comment down below. Make sure you like and subscribe. You know, helps my channel, especially if you like my reactions, man. Thank you for watching and goodbye. I'll see you tomorrow.